The film begins by introducing two youngsters, Jody and Brandon, who are engaged in launching water balloons at pedestrians close by. With a long-standing friendship, they frequently find delight in engaging in annoying pranks. Regrettably, in the midst of their enjoyment, one of their neighbors, Mrs. Gunsin, apprehends them red-handed. Covertly filming their actions, she reprimands them for their disruptive behavior within the community. Subsequently, Mrs. Gunsin escorts them to Jody's mother, June, and presents the incriminating video. It becomes evident that the children have grown weary of Mrs. Gunsin's constant interference, which consistently dampens their enjoyment. Even June holds a negative opinion of her. Mrs. Gunsin cites the case of a local youngster, Jonathan, who used to pilfer from the community. Eventually apprehended, he was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service as punishment. Mrs. Gunsin discloses that Jonathan continues to face difficulties stemming from the penalty, which has disrupted his entire life. Following her talk, she departs with Brandon, intending to approach his parents with her grievances. Meanwhile, June guides Jody indoors and reproves her for consistently engaging in troublesome behavior. The kid attempts to clarify that having fun isn't a wrongdoing, but June emphasizes that another instance will result in confinement indoors. Their exchange highlights June's ongoing distress due to her daughter's behavior. As a single mother juggling multiple shifts to sustain the family, Jody's disruptions consistently disrupt her routine. In response to this, June imposes a week-long restriction on her daughter, stressing the necessity of staying indoors. Once June departs, Jody promptly contacts her closest friend, and the duo embarks on a gaming session. Downstairs, the scene showcases various individuals engaged in their daily routines. Among them is Jonathan, the community service participant, diligently tidying the vicinity. Suddenly, everyone halts simultaneously, as if under an unseen influence. Their movements freeze completely, not a single person making a single twitch. Then, a stranger with striking blue skin approaches Jonathan from behind, delivering a quick zap with his hands. The scene then shifts to Jody and Brandon, still engrossed in their video game. A chain of events unfolds, leading to a quarrel within the room. Unfortunately, this dispute results in the television being accidentally destroyed. Concurrently, an enraged Jane enters. She dismisses Brandon and proceeds to reprimand her daughter for being irresponsible and thoughtless. Jane points out how Jody defied her grounding by inviting a friend over and now damaged the TV. Astonishingly, the teenager retorts that it's just a TV, showing a lack of willingness to take responsibility for her actions. Learning this, Jane becomes distressed, questioning whether Jody truly values her. In the subsequent scene, Jody descends the stairs and encounters a frightened elderly man. To her surprise, it's Jonathan, who has aged significantly due to the mysterious stranger's zap. Jonathan endeavors to elucidate the entire unusual sequence of events to Jody, yet she fails to recognize him. In an effort to make her comprehend, he presents a sizable box left by the stranger. Attached to it is a card reading, "Take and I'll take from you." Perplexed by the enigmatic contraption, Jody's attempt to seek clarification is interrupted as Jonathan quickly departs. Later on, Jody decides to bring the box back home to investigate its contents. However, just as she's about to pick it up, the shrewd Mrs. Gunsin appears. Mistaking Jody for a thief, she seizes the box for herself. Jody attempts to explain that the elderly man gave it to her, but her explanation falls on deaf ears. Mrs. Gunsin stashes the peculiar box in her locker before departing. Observing this from a distance, Jody seizes an opportunity. When the time is right, she accesses the locker with a hair clip and retrieves the box. She then carries it home. Upon opening it, she discovers an unusual device inside. Intrigued, she gives it a push, and the entire world freezes around her. Unaware of what's happened, she presses the button again, and suddenly, everything returns to normal. At that very moment, her mom walks into the room and inquires about the origin of the device. Jody tries to explain that a friend gave it to her, but Jane jumps to the conclusion that her daughter is stealing again. She grabs the device, intending to dispose of it. However, in that very instant, Jody unintentionally presses the button once more. The consequence, everything freezes, her mother included. Jody is initially taken aback, but soon enough, she starts enjoying this newfound power. Initially, she deceives Jane by freezing her and stashing the box. Then, defying her grounding, she encounters Brandon outside, who is also frozen like her mom. Brandon clutches his phone and ice cream. Jody swaps them. Upon unfreezing, Brandon places the ice cream in his ears by mistake, prompting him to ask how she achieved it. Jody discloses the device's secret. They jointly press the button and proceed to enjoy themselves downstairs. They spot numerous people frozen and commence playfully altering their surroundings. Initially, they substitute a woman's sandwich with a flower. Next, they place an egg beneath another woman's feet. Even a gardener is targeted by redirecting his water hose towards him. When they push the button and restore normal time, pandemonium erupts. The people are bewildered and furious, unaware of the cause. They revel in this experience, enjoying the liberty to tease and even pilfer without consequences. Unbeknownst to them, there's a cost attached to their actions. An unexpected punisher is on the way. In the ensuing scene, while Brendan and Jodie converse in their room, an abrupt noise emanates from outside. This surprises them since the world should be frozen. They cautiously venture outside to investigate and discover that someone has broken into Mrs. Gunson's locker. Out of the blue, footsteps draw near, triggering fear in Brandon and Jodie. To cope, they feign being frozen too. Within moments, the enigmatic blue man approaches. He scrutinizes the teenagers extensively, attempting to unnerve them, but they stand their ground. His inspection convinces him that Brandon and Jodie pose no threat, prompting him to depart. After a short while the teenagers ponder their next move, screams erupt from Mrs. Gunson's room. Filled with dread, they hasten to investigate. Through the window, they witness the blue man zapping Mrs. Gunson with a peculiar blue energy. Baffled, she demands to know the reason, and he reveals the same card, "Take and I'll take from you." This unveils that Mrs. Gunson is facing consequences for her habit of stealing from neighbors. Despite her stern attitude towards the kids and her criticism of their enjoyment, she's a committed thief herself. The blue man discovered this and zapped a portion of her face, transforming her into an elderly woman. Regrettably, after finishing his task, he spots the kids observing through the window and heads their way. Jodie and Brandon promptly ascend the stairs and lock themselves in a room. While trying to comprehend the situation, Jodie has an epiphany. The elderly man who approached her earlier was in fact Jonathan. He also faced consequences for his negative impact on society. Now, the blue man is likely pursuing Jodie because she took the box. Overwhelmed by fear, she intends to promptly return it, hoping for his forgiveness. Subsequently, they place the box downstairs, anticipating the man's retrieval. Regrettably, the strategy falls short. Despite regaining the box, he persists in chasing them. Following a brief pursuit, he corners them in a room and begins zapping Brandon. In the nick of time, Jodie intervenes. She implores the blue man to spare her best friend, asserting his innocence. She takes responsibility, admitting she stole and exploited the box. Upon hearing this, the blue man shifts his attention to Jodie, prepared to zap her as well. However, this time, Brandon intervenes. He implores the man to spare them in exchange for setting things right. Jodie wonders if it's due to their pranks on Mrs. Gunson, but the man denies it. Instead, he gestures towards Jane. This prompts Jodie's realization that the man is targeting her because of her mistreatment of her mother. Jodie often disrespects and upsets her, making her cry. Despite Jane's efforts to provide a good life, Jodie's behavior remains unappreciative. Recognizing her wrongdoing, Jodie pledges to become a better daughter, and the blue man finally relents. Before departing, he zaps Jodie's hands, aging them momentarily, to illustrate the consequences of further defiance. In the concluding scene, the teens abandon their pranks. Instead, they dedicate themselves to supporting their family and aiding others. They manage to amass sufficient funds to purchase a new television for Jane. The film concludes with Jodie examining her wrinkled hand, thankful to the blue man for the transformative impact on her life. Thank you for watching our movie recap. While it may seem simple, it actually took a lot of hard work and dedication to produce. If you enjoyed the video, we kindly ask you to show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. By doing so, you'll stay updated on our latest content and help us continue creating more in-depth analyses and critiques of the movies you love. Thank you again for your support.